Hello. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to do an import and how to create a dataset from an import using the import function. One thing you might have noticed is that the color of the tiles has changed. They appear different than they did in the previous video. Also, if I go up here to the user screen and click on that and then go back to home, you see that the colors are now a different color than they were before I clicked. That's because these color changes are just random. I will show you in another video how you can change that and have a fixed color if you don't want them changing constantly. But we won't worry about that right now. One last thing, if you look up here at the top at the project name, we have Project Control Framework. This is the project name that I created on the Try It Now form. So the benefit you have of creating the title is so that you can see it here at the top on the form when you're going through your project. Okay, so now let's go and do some imports and create our first data set. Here it gives you a little information about how the solution works, but I will tell you more about that during this demo. Okay, so let's do one. So after we click Add Dataset, it brings us to this screen, which is fairly similar to a screen that we've seen before, where we fill in the information about the dataset. We're going to do a project control framework, so let's start with the project file. And as you can see, I already have a few files set up, so we'll just select this one, the project file. After I select my file, I need to give it a name, and so I'll just use the name that's already in the drop down here, project file. If I were to click Add Logging, this would add a log to the file that will save any changes that are made. So at any point in the future, if I wanted to go back and see who made what changes, then I can verify those looking at the log. I could also click Analyze the Dataset, which is a very nice feature because it gives you hints and references regarding the length and types of fields that you can use, etc. The downside is that you cannot view the dataset until it's done. So for now, we'll just do the analyzing. We will also set up a short description by clicking here on our drop down and choosing the description we have saved already. If you would like to add more description or documentation, you can do that here. This is strictly for your reference. We have send invite for users, but we'll talk about that in another video. Also, you can see support for English or support for Dutch. If you don't want Dutch, you can just click the slide, but for now, I'll just leave it. Down here, we also have add timestamp, but you've seen add timestamp in an earlier video. It adds the date fields as well as logging the user who made the changes to the file. I'm going to select yes because I do want to see when the changes were made. Here in the middle, we have the percentage records as reference. This references more or less a limited set of input fields that show in the forms later in drop-downs like this. It is also used as a reference when you use different fields that have different values. So you will only be using this on different fields that have a limited number of entries. Additionally, you can use it, for instance, to control the input of the information that you would like to place into the fields that you have selected. And here we have the dataset column label language. So if you're going to import a file, it would be in a certain language. If it's already in English, that's great. If you wanted to choose Dutch, then you just click the drop down and select from the menu here. Okay, now that that's all set, your C3 file should have in the first row the column name for each of the fields or the field name. Additionally, you should also have the content of each field included in your C3 file. We'll leave that for now. Just make sure that you have a common separator and we will start the import. So after we click Start the Import, you see that it says your import is started. Okay, so this step normally does not take very long. Generally only takes a few seconds. So we'll just wait and it'll click over automatically once it's done. Okay, so here we are. We see our form here, and up here at the top, we have our import field, reference fields, column order, and start import go. If you really want to try it, you just click on the start import go. But right now, I want to use it for an entry for importing files, so I'll come over here and just click to make sure that everything looks okay. And as you can see, my C3 has a number of fields here listed. If you look to the left of the field names, you see these special characters that's assigned to each of the fields. This is for the management, okay? What this does is that it lets them know that these particular fields are associated with this particular data set. What I'll do now also is just look at the English label and go through and scroll down here just to see, make sure that everything is okay. Everything looks in order. I see that this one is labeled as a number field. We'll just click on that one and change it. I want to change it from a number field to a date field. So we see that the form here gives me options to do that. I'll just go here and click on field type, and from the drop down, select date field. The field length seems to be okay. I see I could also say that this should be a required field and click here. The user would then be required to fill in that field for this particular date field. But it's not necessary because you can make an entry and then later on you can add a start date to it. Here we have our English and Dutch labels. I have the option to change that, so if I wanted to make it a little nicer, I could also change the Dutch one if I wanted to, but we'll just leave that the way it is for now. Now let's just save our changes and it'll take us back. One thing to remember is that if you use date fields in your input files, make sure that the format is, you first have the 4 numbers for the year, dash, 2 numbers for the month, dash, 2 numbers for the day. Otherwise, it may not be recognized. This is also a date field. Change that and click Save. And also, just for consistency, let me change the English label format here so it looks like our previous one. And save. Okay, so for my project name, I think it's important that the user always fill this field in. So I'm going to click on Required Field. Now looking at my field length, just based on the input that we have, I think that this input limit is too small, so I'm going to extend that out to 128. For the English label, I don't have a specific default value for it, so I'll just leave it as is and just change the N to lowercase. And these other fields up here, I'll just leave those as they are for now. And with regards to the read-only field, I could go more in depth on that, but it's pretty self-explanatory. But basically, it's read-only with no editing. Just click Save and go back to the other page. All right, now I have a status field that seems to be okay. I have focus, start date, end date, time zone. Also, we have area, region name, sales location, as well as the project approval types and comments. Because as you can see, this is a text field name based on our current input that we have. So here in our drop-down, let's click on that and make it a large text field. And let's extend our field length. And then let's click Save and go back to the other page. All right, now, so I think we should also change the customer name and make that a bit longer. So we'll click on that, make that 126, and we'll save that. Also, I think it's important for the project manager. If we add something, I think this should be a required field so someone can input the data. And we'll just change the English label here, make the M smaller, and save our changes and go back. Okay, so for now, I'm pretty happy with where we're at. So let's move on to our next tab. These are our reference fields. So here we see that it recognized that there was one field that had yes/no codes, so it made a system reference for it. But I would also like to add another reference for it because I looked at the data and I saw that one of them had a status, so I want to click on that and add it. However, if I'm using a different language other than English, it won't be recognized. So here in the reference dataset, I'll make this field status reg. And since this is a pop-up, you can add a value. So here where we have empty entry allowed, you can click that and say yes for now. Can you use this as a filter? Remember that the filters will be shown at the top of the screen. So if we click this and say yes, then you can filter out and then say, show me all the reds, show me all the greens, show me all the ambers, and all the different colors separated out. And we see it's active. So if you don't select active, then it will not show up. Let's save. Okay, so now let's see if we need to add another reference. Okay, so let's go to our drop-down menu and just look at the different fields that we have here. All right, so it might be good for us to add a project status. Let's do that. And let's update our reference data set with project status. Also, let's use it as a filter. And let's click on empty entry allowed. Save those changes. And actually, let's add another one. For this one, let's do contract type. And let's make sure we do our reference data set, contract type, type that in. And we'll also make empty entry allowed and use as a filter. Okay. Well, actually, on second thought, let's not use this as a filter. Okay. And let's click save. Okay, that's good. All right. So now let's go to the column orders. So as you see, looking at the column order, this is just the order of the fields. This type of order field is a little different. I can't click here, but I am able to change the order of the fields by dragging them either up or down. So let's say, for instance, if I wanted to move the time zone, I can drag that up by grabbing it and moving it up. And then I can do the same thing for the area and just drag that up as well. And we'll do the same thing for the region name. And if I want to edit, I need to click on the arrows here to make any edits. And I'll click here so that I can add a column. And in my drop-down field here, I can see all the names that have not yet been added. So I want to add a field for the project manager. So now that we've added that field, we need to move the project manager just a little bit higher on the list. All right, now let's add another column. Let's see if it's in our drop-down list. I'm looking for a description label, but I'm not seeing it here. No problem, we can add that field later on. But in the meantime, I would like to see the project ID. So we'll select that and click on Save. All right, so now let's move the project ID to the top, and we see the project name is already there. Okay, so now I'm happy with it. So I'll go to Start Import, and let's click Go. Okay, so like it did before, your import is started. So we'll just have to wait until it processes. This shouldn't take long. All right, there we go. And so it takes us back to our input screen. So basically, everything's ready to go. Let's click on the home screen, and we can see our project file overview tab. And if we click on our references, we'll see the 3 references that have been created. Now let's go back to home, and let's click on the project file overview. And here we can see the file with our product ID. It's here in the beginning where we selected it. We also have the project name, time zone, everything in the order I wanted. I have the project manager here. And up here we have our current status as we've added it. We click the drop down and we can see the different colors, amber, green, red. You can see that there's some additional empty space here because some of the fields when we were entering our data were empty. So that's something you want to clean up before you start importing your data. And the second filter that we added is the project status. So in our drop down, we can say, I want to see all the projects that are on hold, and click that. So here we can see that there are about 3 projects that are on hold. So let's filter it, and then we'll see that only those 3 projects show up. And if I don't want any filters, I just click the blank space and filter. Doing that will show me all of the entries, as we can see here. So now this is a normal record again. So I can click anywhere on one of the records. So I'll click on the record, and as you can see, I can fill in all the data fields that have been added. We added a date tracking field down here, as you can see. We have the insert date and the change date and log user. Now let's save. Okay, so now if I were to click on it again, it will give me the opportunity, so let's click it, to see that the date has been changed here. So if I wanted to see when was it changed, I can see that it was changed just now. And the user that has been changed is raplico test, which is me, so it seems that everything is working properly. As you can see here, we have the status field. In our drop down, we have amber, green, or red. I can change the color. So looking at the 3 colors that we have here, these are the colors that we added in our status entries. So these are the limited options that we have when changing our color. So if I were to say go back or go home, and then let's go to the references. Okay, now let's click on current status. So when we click on that, we can see that we have our 3 color fields here, amber, green, and red. So if I wanted to add a value, and click in the add record, let's add the color dark red. We'll type that in and save it. We see it here. Now let's go back to home. And let's click on project file again. And we'll go to the same record as before. And scroll down and click our drop down. Change our color from green to dark red. And let's save it. And now it's set to dark red. And it's that easy. So your first data set is ready to go. So you can just start adding some users, and then you're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so thank you all for your attention. In the next video, we'll pay more attention to adding data sets and how to link them to each other so that the projects can be linked to the changes in risks, etc. Additionally, in future videos, we will also go into more details on how to design. So if we go here and click back on home, go back to the home page. And as you can imagine, by importing this, the design has also changed. Let's go to the design and look at the data sets. As you can see, the project file is there. And we also have our 3 reference files. And you can just start designing here on this data set. We have a sample. At the top, we have field definition, column order, reference data set, data select labels, buttons, rules, data set HTML, data set tabs. There are lots and lots of options. And of course, if you go to field definition, and then you go to one of the fields, we'll say the area field is not completely right, then you can just change it. Also, you can see that this is the same field where you can drag and drop the order, move one up, move one down. So if you were to say that I have a status field and I don't like where it's at, I can drag it up. And after I place it, I get a notification saying that my sequence order is not yet confirmed. So I will click on confirm, and we see that it has confirmed. Okay, so now let's show a little example of what you can see in the focus area. We can see a few more options now with labels and reference data sets, field HTML, and auto counter. Scrolling down, we can see a lot of other field options. See, it's very simple, very straightforward. So as I go back to the data sets, we've changed it. So let's say that we want to see the status field. We see it here on top. There you go. And we see that it's in the first few fields in a good position for the user. Okay, so that's all we have. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll have more in the next video.